Okay, so let's give this just a second here to make sure everything clicks to life, which it looks like it's doing just fine. So we are here for some collegiate power rankings. I know it's been a minute since I did one of these, but here we are in the spring 2024 season, and we need to cover what's going on. So first things first, there is no Winthrop. If you aren't following the scene at all, you might be going, what do you mean there's no Winthrop? Winthrop, it's been like a year or two since Winthrop has been anywhere really close to the top 20. Why would there be Winthrop? But for those of you who do follow the scene, you know that Winthrop came in with a full Owl, ex Owl level team. It was very, very powerful, but we since had roster mania. Bleaks took out some of their players. One of their players retired. That team is gone. Cannot field a team in Collegiate, or if they can, it's going to be with exceptions and permissions from league organizers and tournaments to add people to their roster even after ad deadline. And it would then be like a mixed team of like maybe top 30 Collegiate level players with Owl players, and I don't think the Owl players will stick. So what we're back to is we are back to the Big Four. Of course, this time the Big Four includes ISU, who is back this semester. Again, giving a little more background than I might usually because I haven't done one of these in a while, but ISU came back this semester. Obviously, ISU entered the collegiate scene. Well, they didn't enter the collegiate scene. They had like a top 32 roster one year, and then they pivoted off of that to go get effectively American Tornado, which was good for them. Their team didn't stay that strong. They were absent last semester. They didn't have a real team, certainly not one that would compete at this level. But then for this semester, they came out, got a team that was top 5 worthy, now is going to be top 4 worthy with Winthrop, who everyone expected to just win this collegiate season, not in play. The other big news this collegiate season is we don't have any sort of ABC running right now. The big thing in collegiate Overwatch has always been ABC, or has been ABC. That's the Blizzard ran tournament. We'd consider that nationals, first party, hosted by Activision Blizzard. Maybe it's still happening. We got an announcement that there was still going to be something, but we haven't actually got anything yet. And here we are in March. We don't really have much more than a month and a half left. We're starting to run out of time here. Maybe 2 months of play. It's certainly not going to see that 10-round Swiss that we've seen in the past, followed by multiple rounds of playoffs. There's simply not time anymore. But other leagues are still happening. However, because ABC is not happening, you don't get all of these teams all together in the same league necessarily. So you have to do a little bit more picking and prodding to figure out where they're playing and what's going on. I've got some examples of that, don't worry. So just as an example, we've got CECC, which is the Commissioner's Cup. That probably has the best claim to fame of being third-party nationals, like nationals for Overwatch that is run by someone that isn't Blizzard. It's probably the biggest thing, and the way they do it is they pick a bunch of different regions here. They have plays into that stuff. Some of this happened last semester for some reasons, like East and Midwest region. But then they have other regions, like South and West, that happened this semester. They'll have a last chance qualifier, it looks like on March 23rd through 29th there. And then they will have the finals, which, is the people who won the different divisions, plus last chance, etc. So that'll be a big deal. That's one place where competition is happening, and we can look at what happened here in West as well as what happened here in South to get a little bit of a feel for what's going on there. We've also got the biggest land that's not CECC that's happening is probably the Kentucky land. This has ISU, so one of the top 4 schools, and then it has a couple other, player level schools, top 20 level schools, maybe a BLINN, Bellevue, Northeastern, but it's got a lot of like right on the cusp schools too. So you could see that at the beginning of the semester, people might have thought that described BLINN, Bellevue, Northeastern, Georgia Tech, CIU, MSU might be in there. Like we have Miami, Ohio, who is probably closer to 30 than 20, but And by that I mean, like 27 sort of thing, 28 as opposed to 21. But, those sorts of things. You have UTD, who most people would have had, oh, definitely a top 15 school. They've certainly had a little bit of a struggle. They do seem to be putting it back together. I suspect that they will, climb themselves back into that top 20. Last rankings, they probably shouldn't have been in the top 20. And speaking of last rankings, we will take a look at what Okra did most recently. So these came out on February 24th. We have the committee voting again, I believe, this Wednesday. So hopefully we would see what the committee comes to this weekend. But some matches have obviously been played since then, and some changes have happened. For example, no more Winthrop, just as an example of what we'd be looking at there. So, what's going on, and how did I come to the conclusions that I did? I've put these teams in order through about, I don't know, here. Below this line, I don't really care all that much. These are teams that I respect are competing in some things. And then I'd add 3 more teams to this that I simply didn't have icons for on this. And those teams would be Mizzou would go in here, MSU would go in here, and Cincinnati would go in here. And we'll get to the why, but Mizzou did compete in Kentucky qualifiers. I believe they dropped out before finishing, but you could see they were mixing it up and would have belonged in this tier. I would have suspected that they ended up about here-ish in this tier. MSU looks like probably would have been more towards the top of this tier, so maybe that's an MSU. And Cincinnati did win their own land that they hosted by beating Miami, Ohio. And you might be going, why am I giving Miami, Ohio this much credit? Why are they in this like one step short tier? They've done some things that sort of make you not totally ignore them. So we see, again, they were expected to win this Queen City Clash. Probably them or Ohio University, not Ohio State, would have been expected to win this. Instead, Cincinnati won this, but they got second place there. Then there was another little LAN. Looks like this one was put on by Penn State, if memory serves. And again, these aren't crazy good Overwatch schools, but we've got Maryland with the Terps, we've got Akron, we've got Penn, we've got Miami, Ohio. There's a baby little land that they won, and we can go through here and see they sort of mixed it up, did qualify for Kentucky land there. So, little bit of a mix there. I would have expected them to do a little bit better in this. I think they did have, not wildly better, but a little bit better. I think they did have a day where one of their starters wasn't there. But let's get back to, instead of starting from the bottom and working our way up, let's now look at the top here. So why are these teams in the orders that they are in? What do people care about? Why are we here? Well, these teams haven't played each other. They haven't played each other, so we kind of look back and go, have the roster shifted? What's happened? What's going on, etc.? It says Fisher Wisp here. I know that's Fisher Esports now. Fisher, I'm about to give up on them and their name changes because, the scene's just not going to track you guys if you keep changing your names. I'm sorry, it's not, especially if your rosters are like, well, this roster was a mix of Thanes and Freaks, and this roster was a mix of men and Sticks, and this roster was nope. No one cares and no one's going to do it. They're just going to go okay, well, I'm only ranking Fisher once now and I'm just going to rank their best team. Seriously, that's the direction you guys are going if you do name changes. That would be my feedback to you guys. But what we're looking at here is this semester, I understand their top team would be known as Fisher Esports. Their second team would be known as, oh boy, do I even remember anymore what their second team was called? Yeah, let me check. And then their third team was Fanes, but let me go check. Let's take a quick look here. Freaks, Fisher Freaks. That was the other F word that they were using there. So, yeah. So, why are they like this? Well, technically, at the very end of last semester, we did see Fisher get the upset win over Maryville. Yeah, I can go with that logic. We'll keep Fisher on top until we actually see something play out between these teams, between any of these teams, to be quite frank. And where are these teams playing? Where can we find this competition? We started to go into that. I'll go a little bit more. This Kentucky tournament, that's one of the things that's happening. That's giving us a good look into sort of the maybe 15 to 25 range teams. You've got a lot of teams that would fall in here. You've got Overwatch Legends division in NECC, and we have two different groups for that. And in here, we could see, oh, look, Winthrop, but Winthrop is now out, so we won't be counting them. But we can see teams like ASU, teams like Mizzou, teams like University of California, Irvine, Illinois Wesley, those sorts of things. Fisher's main team. We could go over to the other division and we could see Bryant Stratton, Converse, uh, ISU, UCSD looks like they've mostly dropped out. I haven't quite removed them from my chart because they did compete in CECC West, but they were this close to being removed from my chart like a couple other teams were. So, we've got some teams here. Unfortunately, more forfeits than I'd like. And then we've got the NACE, their answer to NECC Super Division. They're another third-party league like NECC. Was their answer to Legends Division was their own Super Division, and we can see that in this top box here, the Super Conference. And we've got a few relevant teams that we'd care about. We definitely care about Maryville. We care about Fisher, but these two don't play each other. It would be super interesting if they did, but they don't play each other until round 7. So we'll see that in the final week of the Super Conference regular season there. But other schools in here that we would care about besides these two would be BLINN and UTD. Those are both potentially top 20 schools, and St. Clair is definitely a top 20, almost certainly a top 10 school that we're looking at there for Collegiate Overwatch. So there's some places that we're looking around for where these games are being played without ABC. And if you think I'm missing some really important tournament that has really important matchups, especially for the top 20, top 25 teams, let me know. Cincinnati, I mentioned, won theirs. There weren't exactly top 20 teams there, but, they probably beat some top 30 teams, that sort of thing. So, hey, we'll be aware of that. And there's a couple other things like this where it's like, oh, little baby land, oh, little baby land, this sort of thing. And then we get into our biggest land again so far would be Kentucky this semester that's happening, and then CECC, which would be the big one. Speaking of CECC, let's take a quick look at what happened in South and West, because those are going to be the relevant regions here. And we have both the qualifier and the regional. So we take a look here, and we see Winthrop won through in the qualifier, and Converse got third place with Brian Strassen getting second. But Brian Strassen getting second, it looks like was a thing of, wait a second, this isn't double elimination for this first round of qualifiers here. So maybe that wasn't real. Hint, it wasn't real. We go through to the sort of the regional thing that actually happened after that, and we see, okay, Winthrop did their little group stage thing, won, UTD got the second spot, did almost drop to Columbia there, but ultimately held on. Bryant Stratton lost to St. Thomas, and there was concerns that St. Thomas wasn't competing in anything. They had dropped out of something, if memory serves, but they did show up, compete in this, prove they were real. They beat Bryant Stratton. Bryant Stratton was a top 8 team last season, so that's reasonable. Put up a fight against Converse, but Converse had a real showing and proved, hey, Converse is real. Converse seems to have climbed above the fray. I wouldn't necessarily have expected that at the very beginning here, because I can see here, look, a UCI, that's UC Irvine's second team with a win over Converse. That's not very good for Converse, especially because UCI's second team, lost their star player to UCI's main team heading into this semester. So that would have been a bad look for Converse. But since then, Converse has just absolutely killed it. We see that they went through here. We can see beat St. Thomas. We can see as they got into their actual bracket for the finals there, they beat University of Texas Dallas. They did lose to Winthrop, but Winthrop was, the best team in Collegiate at that point. And in their qualifiers, I'm pretty sure they got a win over... they got a Columbia International win there. I thought we had one more there. I thought I saw one where they beat UST. They beat UST somewhere. So we've got some good stuff, some good looking stuff. Oh no, they beat St. Thomas right there. So yeah, they beat St. Thomas. They beat Texas. They beat BLINN. Those are some great things. Looking for them. Converse looks to have proven themselves above the fray, even though earlier in this semester they did have a single hiccup to that. Their only other losses are to teams that are of the caliber of Fisher Esports, Maryville, Winthrop, that sort of thing. Fisher has more than three teams. I'll come back to that, but Fisher has more than three teams. And there's an argument that they should have a fourth team ranked, to be honest. Um, I haven't done it, but there's an argument that they should have a fourth team ranked. I again run into the issue of what are these teams actually competing in? Because the teams that are actually competing in, like, you know, leagues that say require you to have your players all in the same place at your school sort of require them to mix rosters, and they do a lot of roster mixing for the things that make me sort of go, how am I going to rank your team if your actual team isn't competing in anything? If you like mix team for this, mix team for that, mix team for this. Oh, well, for this you did a real team. Okay, but like, what has your third team done alone? What has your fourth team done alone? And you might be saying, Temporal, you're being awfully critical of them. Why is their third team so highly ranked if you're critical of all this team merging? Well, Fanes, if your third team beats University of California Irvine, I have to give it a little bit of respect. But I have to. It's earned it. And I'm not afraid of doing that. Okay. So, getting back to this, we've sort of covered a little bit down in the bubble here. We've covered where we're watching to find these matches, what's going on here, some of the interesting things. Rutgers has competed in almost nothing, but I do believe they've wrapped up the big esports conference this season. And while competition wasn't amazing for that, and it looks to be the only thing Rutgers has competed in, it did include Illinois Orange. And as long as they beat Illinois Orange this semester, I'm counting them as active. I'm counting that as a relevant win this season, and I'm good with it. So I'm going to continue to say, okay, hey, that's legit. Sure would be nice if we had ABC going on and we saw more of them, but hey, that's where we are. So we get into this, and why are these teams where they are? These teams haven't played each other. That's why they're all up here in this tier. I'm putting Fisher Esports as number one because they kind of won at the very end of last semester against Maryville. Two, because Maryville had wins against them and against other teams. I think Maryville, these two are reasonable to be 1 and 2. I don't know if Northwood has access to their entire roster after the roster mania debacle that happened, or maybe they're not paying attention and or don't care, but the position that they would be vulnerable in, they do have other competent players for, so I'm not too worried. And then ISU is the least proven of these teams. They came back with, a new roster this season. I think they very much belong in this tier with the other teams, and they very well may be better than this, but they're sitting here because they have no previous proof, no previous accolades from the last semester with anything similar to this roster. Whereas we have quite a bit of roster being maintained for these three teams that I've put a little bit ahead of them. So then we move on to our next tier. These are the Kings. One of these four teams are going to win CECC. If, one of these teams would be expected to win any league that any of them compete in. And if all four of them compete in the same league, one of these four is going to win, not a team down here. Sorry, reality. Like, you might see a team down here maybe somehow get a win here, or a team here maybe somehow get a win here, but actually winning it all is very likely to be one of these four teams. Who is the king? Okay, so then Chips disbanded. It's Esports Freaks Fans Navy Stick 76. Only Esports Freaks Fans players. Only Esports Freaks and Fans play in third-party competition. Okay, great. So I'm only supposed to rank three teams then. I thought you guys had a Navy that supposedly played in something, and I know this says Navy, but Navy was last season's third team. I can't edit the image as well. Sorry, guys. I can't add new stuff to this well. If we get much further away, I'll find a way to make it work, but that's where we are. Okay, so as we move on here, we see we've got to our second tier, Fishermen or Fisher Freaks. Fisher Freaks, they have some interesting wins. Let me flip over to that real quick. My Fisher Freaks, and we saw that they have a win against Bryan Stratton, they have a win against BLINN, University of Texas Dallas, and against UCI. That's Irvine's second team there. Irvine's second team is still a top 20 team. So Those are pretty good. Can't complain about those. They are above the cluster, and their only loss that I am aware of this season is to Redbirds, ISU, a team that is in the tier above them. So they're sitting above the fray. They're not one of the kings, but they're sitting above the fray. Cool. We understand why they are there. Okay, then we move on to St. Clair, and St. Clair hasn't competed in much, but they've done what they're supposed to do. So we look at St. Clair and go, hey, where are they competing? What are they doing? Well, are they in the Commissioner Cup? Well, oh, wait, there's no Canada region here. Hmm, that might be a problem. Previous seasons they've had a Canada region, but it doesn't look like there's one for 2024 here. You can see, or maybe there will be, but it hasn't happened yet. They always win in Canada, and there's no competition that's even close to their level. The next schools would be like 10, 15 spots down from them, but I think this time they added this service academy category that hasn't been here in the past. So I think they might have done a substitution there. I don't know if Canada will make it. Regardless, we look at this. They don't have that. What they have competed in is NACE. And have they had any interesting matches? Any matches that matter? Yeah, they've had a couple. Quick win against BLINN there, 3-0. That's a top 20 team. And a win against UTD. That might be a top 20 team. Good for them. And then we see Rit Orange. I'm surprised they dropped a map to Rit. They must have been fooling around. Drexel doesn't matter. And then this last one, they got 3-0'd by Maryville. Okay, fine. They were quite good last semester. They finished off last semester in NACE by making a very good run. That run included taking down Fishermen and, well, a Fisher roster that I'm going to call Fishermen. Again, weird Fisher rosters. And Boise. And Boise was ranked a lot higher last season than it is ranked this season. Did I lose Boise? So that was pretty meaningful. Boise and Fishermen were definitively in this tier. St. Clair finished last semester in this tier, beating both of them. Pretty solid. They've since added a player to their roster. A good addition potentially, and they haven't done anything that really compromises their being up here. Their only loss is to Maryville. They have some okay wins. No real reason to move them. And don't worry, I will catch up in chat in just a moment. Well, maybe not in just a moment, but I will catch up on chat. And if any, I said I was going to hop in voice, didn't I? I should do that. I don't want to lie to the Okra committee. If anyone from the Okra committee wants to join me, I am now in committee hang, and you guys can share your thoughts, yell at me about how wrong I am, or just defend your own thoughts. You know the drill. So we move on here. And we are going to see that we get over to Converse. Converse I sort of already covered. They did have the one loss to UCI's B team. That's not good. But since then, they did everything they needed to. They took out UST. They handled Bryant Stratton, I believe. They handled UTD. They handled someone else that we had in here. They handled BLINN. They kind of proved themselves to be above the fray, and they specifically did that at CEC. We just covered. We haven't covered South yet, but we covered West. They handled this quite, or not West. We covered South, excuse me, not West. They handled this quite well. Obviously, they didn't win it in the end, but the only reason they didn't win it is because Winthrop was there. Without Winthrop, they win this, and this was a competitive qualifier region. So good on them for doing what they did. We can see, okay, makes sense to me. We're solid. Cool. So now we move through to the next tier. These teams are sort of just in the mess, the full-on mess of the cluster. The thought here is that these teams could reasonably take down these teams, but these teams should take down these teams. These teams probably are not going to take these teams down. Likewise, these teams can probably handle these teams, but you expect these teams to beat these teams. You probably aren't going to see these teams beat these teams. That's probably not happening. Nothing too crazy. So this is sort of the core of collegiate Overwatch right now. The like messy, what do we have here? 8 through 15, 8 through 16, something like that. This is sort of the middle of highly competitive collegiate Overwatch. And here we have Fisher's third team. I explained why they were here. I really already did. ASU sort of started me this season with a little. They got a roster upgrade. I thought they'd be good. They started me with something that gave me a little bit of pause, but they did ultimately earn this place and lock it in. And how did they earn this place? Well, that is an excellent question. We've talked a lot about the South region for the Commissioner's Cup. Now let's talk about the West region. This just wrapped up. You can see it was March 2nd and 3rd there. And we can see for the qualifier, things got kind of weird. There's some teams that we care about here, teams that would generally be on our radar. UCSD has been top 20 before. Boise has, usually been top 8. Irvine, frequently top 8. Arizona State University, usually top 15. That might have been the wrong UCSD. This UCSD. And then UCI's second team, top 20. And then maybe these guys, Nevada. Maybe UCLA. If I super extra reach, maybe Hawaii, but that's not happening. So there's some competition here. It's solid. We look at what happened on the first day in qualifiers here. And who won? Well, it looks like Boise won, but Boise won via forfeit. And the third place match was also a forfeit. Huh. So what gives? Well, this day ran super, super long, and I understand Irvine students were getting kicked out of the labs they were using by the end of the day. It ran super long, multiple rounds of best of fives going, all 5 maps. So we saw some forfeits at the end there, which is unfortunate. But for the actually played matches, we see, hey, Boise beat Arizona, so that's not a good look for Arizona, especially because this Boise has lost clear. The beating heart of Boise's team, the probably single strongest driving force player-wise on that team, is gone this season, and that has actually brought their results down quite a bit. We're going to find out in the future. But that team beat Arizona State, so oh boy. Okay, so that's not good for Arizona. And then we've got Boise winning their next match by forfeit. So that's not a real match. And we've got UCI beating UCSD handily. So UCSD not showing up. And again, UCSD in NECC has just forfeited their way through Legends Division, so isn't really playing. And then we've got Irvine in a banger 3-2 match beating their B team. They pulled the best player from their B team after their B team beat them last season to make it into ABC playoffs, and then they went in and pulled away their best player so it could never happen again, and it still almost happened again. So UCI's second team, those guys are cooking with fire. They've got something going on there, and I don't know what to tell you about that, but that is they are somehow with that roster, and it's not like they're bad players by any means. It's just not a roster that you necessarily would have expected to be getting the Converse upset we talked about earlier, bringing it to last map against their A team after the A team again took their tank, etc. So we look at that. Okay, fine. Then what happened in the second day, the actual qualifiers, after they'd sort of already played for, now we have group stages, and we see, unsurprisingly, Boise again, wins to get their group. We've sort of got Arizona getting the lower bracket, so they still get through. Irvine, again, 3-2s, their B team, to get the better spot, but their B team does still make it in by taking down UCSD. So UCSD is effectively it. They've competed in something, so I haven't pulled them from my roster or from the power rankings, but the only thing they're competing in, they seem to be eliminated from. And then we have our actual playoffs that happened for our qualifier. And we see Arizona State gets the win in the end. So they reverse it. It looks like they lost twice to Boise there, but they get the win over Arizona in the end. And to do that, they also had to 3-0 UC Irvine's main team. So 3-0ing UC Irvine's main team after UC Irvine 3-2 their B team twice, beating Boise. I'm going to put them up here. Am I maybe being a little too hard on Boise? Maybe. Maybe I should have Boise a little bit further along than I do, a little bit further along here because they did beat ASU twice, or maybe I need to drag ASU back a little bit. I would be open to that criticism. But that is how we got where we are. They won the qualifier in the West Division, which is a pretty big deal. Rutgers, I just can't move them too much. Like, again, a year ago, Rutgers would have been up here. A year ago, Rutgers was definitively the fourth best team in collegiate Overwatch, but they're not playing in anything. The only thing they seem to have been playing in is that big conference this semester. Hopefully, they will show up at other tournaments that they've perhaps been invited to. But, for now, that's the only real play data I have on them. I'm not going to just tank them. Because they're competing in something, I'm not going to remove them, nor am I going to massively drop them, because I don't think it's reasonable to massively drop them, and I don't think it's reasonable to remove them unless they've dropped out of everything, which it doesn't look like they have. UC Irvine's A team, we just covered this. They're not playing in a ton, but CSEC West, they did have to beat their B team twice. That's worth something. St. Thomas, we covered as well. It looked like they weren't in much, but then they showed up for CSEC West and they were relevant. Ultimately they couldn't beat Converse. They obviously couldn't beat Winthrop, but they did show up. And if we look back, hey, what did they do while we were looking at our our South region here? We can see that they had to get some meaningful wins. Columbia, sure, that's something. Columbia's a bubble team potentially, but we can see in the qualifier here that they came on through, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to re-find them. My eyeballs don't seem to be working. Lost to Winthrop there in the qualifier, but then in the regional, I know they got wins. In the regional, they did 3-2 Bryant Stratton. Again, last season, Bryant Stratton was a top 8 team. Bryant Stratton might have had slightly easier paths than some people, but they got top 8 both in ABC and in NACE. Can't really deny it to them. They earned that. So now getting a win over them, hey, that is relevant. And then they put up a little bit of a fight there against Converse, but ultimately can't compete with Converse or Winthrop. Not a huge knock on them. Okay. So we now move on to Bryant Stratton. Bryant Stratton, like, should they just fall off the earth? They took some losses there. Should we just look at that and say, okay, well, I guess they're dead now? Not necessarily. They've still got a UTD win this season. They've pretty much only got that. Losses to Northwood, St. Thomas, lost to BLINN, Converse, lost to Winthrop. Can't really blame them for Winthrop. Converse, Northwood, we understand, sure. But St. Thomas and BLINN and Fisher Freaks, that's not looking great. These guys would be in danger of falling some more. These guys would be in some danger of falling some more. They really need a better win than UTD to stabilize them. They're sort of holding on to last semester's glory at this point, last semester's accomplishments. Boise, we covered. We covered them a lot when we were talking about the Boise ASU matchups. They did beat them, but then most recently they lost. They lost their star center player in Clear. That's a big hit both on the talent on the field and to their comms. They're sort of going to need to prove that they can do a bit more than what we've seen out of them, or that they can repeat it. They also took a loss this season, and part of why they're down here, even though they beat ASU twice, is they did take a loss to Bellevue, who you'll notice is still in the tier below them. Why is Bellevue still in the tier below them? Because it's not enough. It's a one-off win from Bellevue. Boise has a couple good wins against ASU here. You still have to look at this and say, okay, I'm not ready to bring Bellevue up to here or to here. Like, they just haven't proven it. Bellevue's roster should definitely be up in here, but they still haven't been proving that with their wins, with their matches. Okay. And one of the reasons they haven't done that is they took a loss to BLINN. Okay. So now we move on back to our next one. UCI we've covered in a lot of depth already. They lost twice to their A team, but they did get the one win against Converse, who was a full tier above them. That's going to be worth a lot, but we're still going to put them back here. And then BLINN. And BLINN may surprise some people, because BLINN in previous semesters has had a well-funded esports program, but not a very competitive team. They had like two, maybe three GMs or top 500 players, and then the rest of their team was diamonds. And that's what their Overwatch team has looked like, or it's been even more diamonds than that, I believe, in previous semesters. So, like, they've maybe been good in other esports, but BLINN this semester is real. And it was weird that they got votes last semester. Last semester, they absolutely did not deserve votes. I know they got some wins against like, oh, this top 27 team that they just harvested, something like that, but like they were never going to be top 20, and it's weird that they got Okra committee votes last semester. That said, this semester they are absolutely a real team. They are almost certainly a top 15 level team. Maybe they could fall out of that if you really see Illinois and Iowa reactivate play, that sort of thing. If you see Bellevue put it back together, UTD, Northeastern, etc., like sure, they could potentially fall lower than that, but they're certainly a top 20 team. And they're good, and there's not a ton to say about that other than, well, why do you say they're good? How have they proven that they're good? Okay, well, let's go back to relevant matches. So we can go look at two real places. We can look at the Kentucky Bluegrass tournament, and let's take a quick look at BLINN. Oh, what do you know? Illinois State, so one of the top four teams, is currently qualifier play is over for the Kentucky LAN, so the top teams have made it here, and unsurprisingly, the top team is ISU. One of the big four, that makes sense. But BLINN walked through with a 6-1 record, with their only loss being to ISU, and they proved it by beating both of the teams underneath them. So BLINN has sort of done that. Okay, that makes sense. Qualifier, they did a good job here. Can't really knock them for that. And then we can also go over, once again, to our Commissioner Cup here, where we can see, well, how did they do? Well, they beat Bryant Stratton. And maybe that just means Bryant Stratton isn't good anymore. I don't know. But they did beat Bryant Stratton there. They played a close game against Converse, who we're saying is above the fray. So if BLINN isn't real, if BLINN played 3-2 against Converse when BLINN is actually in this next tier down, you're telling me they played that close against a team 2 full tiers above them? I don't think so. I don't think so. So BLINN is sitting here in the towards the back of, but in the mid cluster here. We didn't play BLINN. Thank you. We didn't play BLINN. You are correct, Hedwig. That was a scrim. Doesn't count. You are correct. Thank you, Hedwig. They played another team, didn't they? Am I crazy? They did beat the team directly below them. You know what? We can see their matches. They beat UTD as well. That was it. And actually, I wanted to cover this. You're right. We did not play BLINN Hedwig, but they played Georgia Tech, who is underneath them. They played Bellevue, who has the 3 spot in the qualifier. They played Columbia, who is one of the top six teams, I would say, in the qualifier, and they played UTD. So those are some good wins. That was a very real path that they had to go through to get there. Obviously, they lost to ISU. And so they dodged us, but we're kind of the only good team that they dodged there. But the point that I'm getting to here is this is really important. Like, these are all, pretty real wins that they got here in Kentucky qualifier. And they also, over at here, we see, wait a second, they played Converse very close. I don't usually care very much about maps, but it's a data point. They beat Bryant Stratton, but Bryant Stratton might be bad, but we're combining that with the data point above. And then they lost to UTD here, 3-2. They actually got reverse swept. But if we go back to the previous day, we can see that am I crazy here? So UTD beat BLINN here, 3-1. No, this is the top 16 results. Oh, I'm trying to remember this. So this is this. So UTD beat BLINN. And then we go through to the next day where we see BLINN beat Bryant Stratton but lost to St. Thomas. And then we see again UTD lost to BLINN, but over in Kentucky qualifiers, BLINN beat UTD. So these two teams have had some back and forth where it looks like maybe UTD has come out slightly better, but UTD certainly didn't feel like they came out slightly better. And I would look at this and I would actually think the matchup between these two teams is pretty important for how both of these teams are playing right now. I would strongly guess, and I'm just going to show something. This is important because it's related to UTD, and UTD is pretty important. UTD is a staple of this scene. UTD has been, for a long time was a top 8 team, and anytime you tried to move them lower than that, they'd get an upset by beating the second best team in Collegiate or the third best team in Collegiate. And you go, okay, fine. And then they might miss playoffs twice in ABC, whoops, and then they'd go beat Northwood again or something. And you go, what do we do with this team? But we look at University of Texas Dallas, and this is a story in and of itself. University of Texas Dallas, a team that I was talking about how they have used to be a top 8 team and more recently have still at least for sure been a top 15 team, is potentially out of the top 20 and is down below MSU? Huh? What? UTD is down below MSU? Well, maybe that's just MSU got easy matches, right? Surely that's what's going on here. There's no way that they should actually be below MSU. I don't remember if this match was actually played. I think this was a forfeit. They lost, UTD lost to Northeastern, lost to MSU, and lost to BLINN. So, WTF? Why is UTD so bad? UTD wasn't this bad last semester. UTD got a win over Fishermen last semester. Fisher's second team, the team that I am showing as this semester right here. So how could they, and that's the sort of thing they do. Anytime you start to go, oh, they're about to fall out of the top 15, nope, they're going to go beat a top 5, top 6 team, that sort of thing. So what happened here with UTD? My guess is 2 things. We hit a very big patch. Some people are calling it Overwatch 3, but we hit the big health change, DPS passive. We hit the big patch. Right as, we hit the big patch in part of this time when they saw these losses. So that's not great for them. But they also probably didn't realize BLINN was a real team. They probably thought BLINN was still a pushover team and were then therefore upset when BLINN came in and beat them. I would guess that they got a little bit surprised by the fact that BLINN was real. And then this MSU match immediately followed that. It was literally right after this match. And they shouldn't have lost to MSU necessarily. I say that, but then apparently they scrimmed and things didn't go much better, when they scrimmed a couple days later. So I don't know. But the point that I run into here is I think UTD's mentals got destroyed by a combination of BLINN and then patch and some sort of mess, whatever. I don't think UTD is a top 7 team right now. Don't get me wrong. But I think they fell pretty hard. And then, 2 weeks later, they still lost to Northeastern. But then, we saw that. So they're still not I don't think UTD is currently they are a top 12 team for sure. I do think I've got them placed correctly about here, somewhere in the 19 to 21 range, whatever. But I do think that they had a big downswing and are sort of building that back up. Maybe this is as far as they build it back up. Maybe they don't. But I think after they went back and beat BLINN, that it looks like BLINN has struggled a little bit. BLINN has maybe not taken as big of a downswing as UTD necessarily did, but looks to have taken a little bit of a downswing. And I actually think that's part of why we saw the results we did here, where we saw this reverse sweep happen, because it looked like UTD was starting to put it back together and BLINN was falling a little bit, though perhaps not as far as UTD fell. But hey, that is me just taking my belief based on having watched the streams, played against UTD, all these things. But hey, that's where things are at the moment. Did I rank Mizzou? Yes. I don't have an icon for them, but I would put MSU right here. I would put Mizzou right here, and I would probably put Cincinnati right... I guess I have to put Cincinnati right here as well. Those are the 3 teams that I don't have icons for, and that's where I'd put them. Maybe I'd put Mizzou here. This range is where all 3 of those teams would go. Okay, but anyway, that's that saga. That's where that is. We'll see if UTD reloads and is now solid. We'll see if BLINN sort of stops their little hiccup. But for now, I think things look like this, and you might be going, why is BLINN ahead of UTD if I think UTD was on a bit of a downswing, but the most recent thing is a loss? UTD just hasn't really delivered this. I mean, the real answer is this. The real answer is that you can't do this. Like you can't do this in a tournament that literally everyone expected you to be right here for, at least after Converse dropped out. You just can't do it. And again, it wasn't just a 1 day thing where UTD lost to, oh well, they lost to BLINN and then immediately lost to MSU. No, 2 weeks later, Northeastern took him down. You can't do it, UTD. Okay. So we move back to this. And Cincinnati, oh, let's see some Cincinnati talk. Don't worry, we've talked about them some. I understand you guys won the Queens Clash there. Very nice. Cincinnati, I would still put about right here, but which is out of the top 20, but still good on you guys. So we moved through here. We covered BLINN. We covered a lot of UTD while talking about that. Illinois Orange isn't playing in anything. I can't do anything with that. Same with Iowa. I believe Illinois Orange played, I could be misremembering, in the NECC Legends relegation slash promotion tournament. I believe they did, but then they dropped out. Iowa might have been the same story, or they might not have even done that. The issue that you ran into with that is it was a crazy long day where multiple teams, A, it had some poor seating, but B, multiple teams had to play super, super long days. I can't really be super mad at teams for dropping out of that, but it means they're not really competing in anything. The only match I'm really aware of that matters is the one match against Rutgers. They lost that for the Big Ten or the Big Esports Conference here. They're not really playing in much else, but the roster still exists. They're still good players. If something shows up, maybe they'll play in it. Because they played in that, I'm not removing them from my table. Other teams may pass them, they may not. This is kind of roughly where they're going to sit unless they play in more. Iowa, I think, has played in even less, and basically the same story there. Then we get on to Bellevue. Bellevue on paper should be better than they are. Same thing should have been true last semester. They should have been unquestionably a top 15, probably a top 8 team with the roster that they have. They're not. Last semester, they were doing a lot of split scrimming, like a lot of these top teams do, where their players frequently aren't scrimming together and are going and playing on their different contenders teams and OWCS teams and things like that. But then they'll come together for matches, and they're all just good enough players and have enough scrim practice in general that it works. But this season, they are clearly actually playing together, scrimming together heavily, and the results have mostly not shown up. They do have the one win over Boise, which is good, but I'm more holding that against Boise than I'm counting it for Bellevue, and then they lost to BLINN. So I'm not willing to be like, oh, they're running away with it, they're super strong yet, etc. It's not there for me. The roster should be super strong, but that program has repeatedly disappointed. It has. That roster has always had tons of contenders talent, and it's almost always scored worse than it should. Sometimes it's been pretty good, but it's always scored worse than it should. So I just have concerns about the program there, what they're doing to keep the athletes on task, or if, maybe someone is poisoning the well, maybe a student, maybe administration, I don't know, but that team never performs as good as it should, which doesn't mean that they're not good players and don't have the potential to win. They certainly should. Northeastern, I don't have too much to say here. Obviously, Northeastern is my team. I have rated us in the top 20. I don't think that's wrong, personally. And you can call me a homer if you want. If anyone on the committee wants to hop in Discord, I'm there. That's perfectly fine. You can yell at me about how wrong I am, but I mean, 5-2, ahead of a bunch of bubble teams, beat UTD. Well, okay, cool. You're ultimately gonna have to pick someone for this spot. Could you pick UTD for spot 20? You could. UTD just have the win over BLINN. That's cool, but they've also got the loss to BLINN, which you wouldn't have expected, and you have losses to a lot of other teams. Like if we want to look at what UTD has done, UTD definitely needed to be out of the top 20 in the last power rankings that the Okra committee did. Let me see what I've got for their totals here. They've got a loss to Bryant Stratton. That's not good. Bryant Stratton hasn't been doing amazing this season. They've got a loss to Converse. They've got a loss to BLINN. They've got the loss to MSU. They've got a loss to MSU. They've got a loss to Northeastern. They've got a loss to St. Clair. They've got a loss to Fisher's second team here, Fisher Freaks. Losses to Winthrop, a second loss to Converse. Like, I don't know, man. That's going to be tough for me to be like, oh yeah, definitively these guys should just edge into the top 20. Yeah, I don't know about that one. Okay. Then we move on here, and now we're out of the top 20. UTD was team 21 here, and we get into what I'm calling the one step short. And these teams are still pretty good. CIU, we saw where they were in Kentucky qualifiers. We also saw they played pretty good against Converse and pretty good against UTD, but didn't quite make it in qualifiers. So maybe they should be higher, but I actually don't think this current patch has hit them particularly well. I think they were better on the last patch. Maybe they've put it together now, but I think on the last patch they definitely would have been mixing it up in here. Maybe even more in here. But I don't think we can sort of look at what happened since the patch here and go, okay, how did they do? Columbia. And what did they get? And they got a loss to Miami, Ohio in their round 7 match. And Miami, Ohio is an annoying team. Don't get me wrong. They'll come out with the counter strats, the weird stuff, the whatever, the sort of stuff that wins you matches but doesn't win you tournaments. They can be an annoying matchup, to be perfectly honest. I say this from experience. Yeah, they've found that win. Yeah, my team is a lot better than them. Sorry, Miami. Sorry, but I think it's true. But they're certainly an annoying team to get matched against because they will punch above their weight sometimes. That's always been them. Even back 4 years ago, it would be, okay, they're a top 12 team. Oh, they just lost to a top 30 team. Yeah, that sounds like Miami. Now they're much closer to that top 30 team most of the time, but they will still every once in a while go, hey, we're just going to take someone out. And they do it. Good on them. But we see this. Obviously, the loss to ISU, no big deal there. Loss to BLINN, we understand that. But the loss to Miami there at the end, not an amazing thing to happen. And so, hey, that is what we're looking at there. But they could have been a day away last I saw them playing from having really put it together and now playing much better like they were in the last patch. UCSD, I'd almost drop UCSD. That's Frosted's team. That's the team that similar to Miami actually, except sort of a more modern version of it. They might finish top 6, top 8 in ABC, or they might not make playoffs. Depends how they're feeling. They're not feeling it this time apparently because they dropped out of Legends Division in NECC, or they're forfeiting everything at least. And in Commissioner Cup, they just didn't make it. They just, as soon as they ran into good teams, they folded. They're going to be on the outside. Georgia Tech, no problem with them. Georgia Tech, no problem with them, just like no problem with Columbia, no problem with Miami, Ohio. These are all teams that sort of, hey, are I'd say in the bubble, right outside the bubble, whatever you want to consider it for. Hey, these guys with a tiny bit of luck, with a little bit of a push, could potentially be in there. Some people may have them in their top 20, though if you have them above 18, any of these teams, you're probably trolling. So yeah, that's kind of what those look like. Miami, Ohio, I think I sort of started by giving them some accolades. They got second in this against Cincinnati. They won this little baby LAN. They qualified for Kentucky LAN, even if they didn't have an amazing placement to do so. We can see Cincinnati, again, I covered, would be in this spot right around here after beating Miami, Ohio. MSU would be somewhere around like here-ish. Mizzou would probably be somewhere around like here-ish as well. And any of these teams really in honestly here to I'm going to cut it about there could reasonably be 19 or 20 in people's top 20. But I would say this is probably what I have for the order. This is what I have for the order right now. Ball State, they don't have their tank player from previous seasons, so they're unsurprisingly playing a bit worse here. IWU, I don't have too much to say there. And Ohio did lose to Miami twice. They lost both at the Queen City Clash and in ESC there. So they're sort of going to go down here. But that's kind of what I've got. That's kind of what I put it. I know these teams are all active, but they're just not really competitive enough to even like adjacently make it like some of these other schools did. So I know these schools are active, but they haven't done anything that even puts them remotely in the conversation as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, that's been a lot of talking from me. I will now catch up on chat. Again, if anyone on the Okra committee wants to hop in and talk about their views on this or what their views look like or anything really collegiate Overwatch related, even like making predictions or anything like that, I'm on board, and I know you guys are sometimes looking for those things to talk about. But and if you want to chat, again, committee chat, you guys that are on the committee can hop in there. But let me catch up on some chat here. All those lower schools are better than IDWU? Could be. I doubt that, actually. I would have doubts that IWU would lose to the Terps. I'd also kind of doubt that they'd lose to Akron. I'd also kind of doubt that they'd lose to RIT. And I definitely doubt that they'd lose to Ohio. So no, I don't buy that. Okay. UC Santa Cruz is fun, but they haven't been good in a minute. UC Santa Cruz, like 3 years ago at this point, 2.5 years ago, was the top 16 level team back when we were playing ball, dive, mirrors, and it was so much fun. Overwatch 1, but they've graduated their players. I think one of their good players is still around coaching. I think Zebra's still there as well, but that team sort of it just can't field 5 high enough level players anymore. UC on top. Well, we've got 2 good UC Irvine teams, so we've got that version of UC on top. UCSD is not as strong as they've been in the past, and UC Santa Cruz is just nowhere to be found at competitive collegiate Overwatch at this point. Sorry. I liked it when we had a good UC Irvine team and a good UC Santa Cruz team and UCSD on the outside looking in. That was a lot of fun, but not it anymore. Okay, so we are lucky our team is 4 sophomores and 1 freshman. A lot more time to grow. Is that Cincinnati? Which team is this? You beat them and you're a champions team? I've seen IWU be variable before. I've not shocked also if they could be imploding. I don't really see them playing in anything. I don't think they have any matches that have made it up to the level that I really look at. But last season they were doing things like trading matches with ball and occasionally getting upset wins and then also losing to teams worse than them. So or that you would have expected to be worse than them. So they were never in my top 20. They would have been close to maybe 24 is the best I'd have ever had them in. Now I have them lower than that. And if you told me that no, they actually fell out and they're like top 32 or top 37 or something like that, I'd be inclined to believe you. Meta swung in your favor during OWCS Evolution. Okay. Oh, Zest. Hey, Zest. How you doing? See how you took that one day? Watch out. Oh, got it. Those things clicked for you. I love it. I'm thrilled to hear it because I want good scrim partners, and you guys firing on all cylinders is fantastic news. So I'm glad that the patch sort of clicked for you. Co-college, it's Kurt. Got it. Hey, Kurt. Well, you can hop in if you want. I mean, you've got to be somewhere you can talk, but you could hop in. I am in the chat there. But or you can just, do text. Text is fine as well. And you beat IWU. Yeah, IWU just being dead this semester again wouldn't be a shock to me. I don't know that I sort of kept them here from relevancy last semester where they got a couple pretty cool wins. Um, and in fact, last season, did they make it into something? Yeah, here we are. So they made it into Legends. Got it. Oh, they don't belong in Legends is the thing. Like they were one of the teams that probably earned the right to challenge into Legends, but they never should have actually made it. But the challenging into Legends got messed up by UCI, so UCI's second team, getting fed in as if they were a third place team from a division as opposed to a first place team, which they definitely would have been the equivalent of. It had poorly seeded brackets for the different ways in. Like I remember it had way too long days, so you had good teams like Illinois Orange just forfeit. Like the qualifier for this semester was a bit of a disaster, and it looks like IWU got through when someone else, like say a Georgia Tech, probably should have. I don't think Georgia Tech might have fared monstrously better. This win over Grandview isn't real. That's a forfeit, I'm almost certain. I'd be interested in the Illinois Wesley versus Mizzou, but I'd definitely favor Mizzou. Do they have any wins? I don't see any wins. Yeah, these are all losses. These are literally all losses unless they catch. Is there a weak team in here besides Grandview's forfeiting? I don't see anyone weak enough in this division. The only match, and they should super heavy prep for the match, would be Mizzou. Like, that is the only match that they have a prayer of winning, barring 3+ subs showing up for a team. And how's the other Legends division look? UCSD is forfeiting their way through. Bryant Stratton looks weak, but shouldn't be weak enough to actually be free for anyone. UCI has proven that they're real. Is there anyone bad in here? I guess UCI did get in. Yeah, but they came in on what was a like third place seed from champions or whatever, which is just not real. They would have easily been as good as a Georgia Tech, an Illinois Wesley, a Mizzou, teams that had previously won their division. Oh, so this is the free team. SNHU is free and will not be able to win anything. I see they have a.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna get
There
a
Hey Kurt.
around there.
Hey Kurt. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Doing pretty well. Doing pretty well. Yeah, I think they're dead. Do you see anyone else in here who looks soft?
No, yeah, only SNHU is probably the outlier on that one. I definitely think they got lucky.
I think this
with...
could have been interesting if we'd had some of these teams not, doing forfeits. Like UCSD, like if UCSD and UCI played each other, that might have been interesting. But SNU was just too far behind, I think.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I definitely think they're like Georgia Tech. I think actually kind of got screwed by the seedings in the relegation tournament.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. And wasn't there someone who dropped out? I thought it was Illinois Orange. Maybe it was someone else.
Yeah, Illinois Orange, and then Cincinnati didn't even play because they weren't told until like 3 days before, and they were busy.
Sure.
So
sure. Okay.
I don't blame them. It was a lack of it was a very lack of communication on the NECC part, which is unfortunate. It was the first year for the relegation.
Of course.
It was very exciting, but yeah, they needed a little bit better on the communication side, which they'll probably do better.
This stuff is hard to figure out. I mean, I'm giving tournament organizers and teams and such a lot of crap, but the reality is there's a ton of moving pieces and blood, sweat, and tears that makes all this stuff run that is not terribly well compensated. And, so I'm not actually being that hard, trying to be that harsh on people. But is there anything in general you wanted to jump into since I've got you here? Anything where you feel like, hey, maybe a hot take that you think should be a lot higher or lower, or an upcoming match that you think is exciting? What you got?
I am so confused about UST. I don't
Sure.
know what to feel about them because they dropped out of everything, but then when they play and stuff, they win.
They're scrimming. And they
Yeah, and
don't
the scrimming,
like
but
they're scrimming, but I think weren't they the team that they wanted to sign up for something and like they would have had to pay money and they're like, what, we'd have to pay money and
that was the NECC debacle. Yeah,
okay, okay,
yeah,
that was
they
them.
want we wanted them to be in Legends,
Sure,
and they were they weren't willing to fundraise to get in it. Like nothing. Like they weren't willing to pay any kind of money to do it. So I that's up to them. They're a club. It's
sure.
tough.
Oh,
It's
it's
tough on
absolutely
that
tough.
end.
Yeah,
But yeah, the I know personally the NECC was gonna put out some things to help them,
sure.
and
But it
they
still would have
just
been a
didn't
work
want
on their
to.
part. Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
I hope they change their. I know they have a interim director, like a new director in there, so maybe some things will change up. But I would love to see them in the Legends or something that's competitive for a league wise. Just get more eyes on them.
Okay, okay. Yeah, no, I think it would be good. Um, they've competed in stuff in previous seasons. Like back when we had Hugh, they'd usually compete in that. Maybe not always with totally legal roster. I mean, um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I also don't know about BLINN. Like I was all in on them once they got their like full
Hmm.
roster, and then they started losing again. I was like, wait, what?
Oh, I
I
think
thought
they're fine. I mean, they
I
lost
think they are too,
to.
but I think
Go ahead.
no, I think they got to find their identity again. I think they kind of maybe lost it for a bit, and
Yeah, I
I think
think
they'll be back.
they had the benefit of what they were doing was probably a little better on the last patch than it is on this patch, but I think more what that was is they just got used to winning would be my expectation. Like they got used to going, we go in, we beat everything, and then they hadn't really faced real competitive match struggles, maybe in scrims, but competitive match struggles. And that can take a minute for a fresh team to, well, how does this team handle losses? But I don't think they nosedived as hard as UTD did. Maybe UTD didn't nosedive that bad. Maybe this is just what they
Yeah.
are. But like, I think they're probably going to right that ship. Maybe not be quite as like, oh yeah, we're gonna, you know, take out. I don't know that I expect them to come back and take out Converse or Fisher Fanes or anything like that. But I think they're going to mix it up in this tier pretty reasonably. Could they fall into the next tier? Absolutely. They're certainly not up and away and out of it, but I don't think they don't belong. I think they've kind of established that they belong here.
Where am I just missing? Do you have Boise somewhere?
I do. Boise is right here. Yes. It may take an
Am I
instant for you to catch
blind?
up there. That's fine. But B Esports, right between Irvine and Bryant Stratton.
Oh Jesus, yeah.
Oh, good.
Okay, it's right
It's all
there.
good. They're usually using like
I
blue
was
and
wait.
orange. My
I
icon
was
doesn't
looking
have
for their
blue and
blue and
orange.
orange.
Yeah. All good. All good.
And I would agree with that mid cluster. They kind of the loss of what's his
Clear,
face?
clear.
Oh,
Claire.
we
Yep.
got someone.
Hello,
Is that
hello.
Shocker? Who'd we get?
Yes, hello, hello.
Hey, Shocker. How you doing?
A little sick, but chugging through.
I had one of those last weekend. Wasn't fun, but glad you're hanging on. If you want
Yep.
to be, sick for ESC playoffs, that'd be okay with me, though. You want to schedule that
Hey,
now?
all I'm
No.
saying, the hashtag free Kabunga movement might be what
Uh,
pushes our team into the winning status. I'm not gonna lie.
okay,
We,
okay.
we, we won we won when I wasn't here with him, so.
True, true. You guys, as I was saying, got that win over Cincinnati, which I would have considered an upset. So good on you.
We did not beat Cincinnati,
Not,
but it was close,
or not
3-2.
Columbia. Sorry,
Yeah.
Columbia, was
Yes,
who I
Columbia
meant.
we beat.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Cool,
Yeah,
cool.
that's a solid win. Columbia. They're a good like I think too is like a one step short type of team.
So, how do
Uh
you
Yeah.
feel about BLINN, Jocker? That was sort of the topic of the moment. How are you feeling about them?
Sure, yeah. BLINN just Raf, I mean, they're a bunch of great guys, that's for sure. And I think,
Agreed.
they all are very active in tier 3 to my knowledge, and I know they all want to grind and get better. So I think even with the recent losses, they'll be able to bounce back. Maybe
Okay.
not like to some crazy level, but I think they'll always be a competitive team and they should never be ignored, in my opinion.
Okay. And what do you think about St. Thomas, the team that doesn't play in anything but does pretty good when they do?
I think St. Thomas is honest. I've been ranking St. Thomas in like my 15 to 20 range pretty much
Okay.
every week. So I think even though they don't play in much, I think they're still a solid collegiate team regardless. And I think they have
Okay.
the pieces, they have the talent. It's just a matter of, it's just hard to rank them because they don't play in too much. But I think when they are playing and stuff, they will do well.
Well, so they beat Bryant Stratton and they beat BLINN and they lost to Converse, but Converse is, just walking on sunshine these days. So I sort of look at that and does that just mean Bryant Stratton is bad? Like what's going on here? Because
I
Bryant
think,
Stratton was last
yeah,
semester they got results, but
I've
were
been
they just
very
blessed? Go ahead.
I've been very confused with Brian and Stratton, to be honest, because on paper that team is like last semester they honestly like kind of surprised us, to be honest, and we have our expectations pretty high of them after that successful last semester.
Right.
But I do think they should be at that level. I think they have the talent, they have the work ethic, and they have they play in almost everything, to my knowledge.
Sure.
They play in
Yeah,
like every
they.
tournament they can.
So
So
what
I
I
don't.
have them for like score wise,
Hmm.
so Bryant and Stratton, like I have them in NECC and then the CECC qualifiers. They don't have a lot of good wins on the season yet.
No,
They beat
it's
they
rough.
beat UTD 3-1 early in January. But
UTD isn't a good win this semester. I'm sorry,
no,
but like
now it's
it's
not.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then they have losses to overall. They might have played in other stuff that I don't have, but they're like 7-6 in CCC and NECC.
Hmm.
They have losses to Winthrop, Fisher Freaks, Northwood, St. Thomas, BLINN, and Converse.
And again, a loss
All
to
good
like
teams,
Fisher
all
Freaks and
really good
Winthrop
teams,
is
but
nothing. Same with
yeah,
Northwood, but like St. Thomas, you could, that should be doable. BLINN certainly should be doable. Converse, maybe a little bit of a reach, but not for how they were playing last semester. So,
no, of course. I think they would have beat Converse handily last semester, but
well, I think Converse was also worse last semester, to be
that is,
fair.
yeah,
I
that
think
is
Converse
true.
right now is sort of going,
They've figured it out, yeah.
yeah.
Have they played Vader at all? Their new hit scan, or is Ginja still playing hit scan? Do you know?
Ginja's in chat. He's lifting weights, but he should be able to between sets tell us what's going on. You know. How you
Yes, I
doing,
know. I
Ginja?
know they've finally solved their DPS woes,
Yeah, I
but I
mean
haven't seen
that's
him play yet.
yeah, that would certainly be nice. Hammer says he's the goat. Okay, well, Hammer could also answer the question for us, but uh,
he's hit scan DPS. Okay, good ninja.
okay, Greninja's still their
Okay.
hit scan DPS. Okay, so
Got it.
they're doing it, and Kiwi's been high on them before, saying, "Hey, with a real hit scan, we're just the best," and maybe he's right. I'm not,
I,
or maybe not, because the Greninja magic might be making everything work. Okay, cool. Okay, anything else jump out at you? I was talking to Kurt here, but Shocker, anything jump out at you where like there's a team maybe you're particularly hot on or a matchup you'd really like to see? Anything of the sort?
honestly, just because of how Miami in the leagues Miami plays, and I don't have the greatest view of NECC like other teams, but
Sure.
I think the one team I kind of have my eye on is Rutgers because it seems like they are a team that should be ranked, but then again, they are in a very, very weird spot now. And I really, because they have the people to make it work, I just want to see what they can do. And I feel like we haven't seen that at all. Not
So
in BEC, not in NECC.
the only reason I've actually got them ranked at all, honestly, is because I understand that their big conference did wrap up this season, and so I've pulled it up on my screen here. But these were the teams in it, and Illinois Orange is a real match that I believe happened this semester, or at least on
It
this
did,
side of the
yes.
holiday. So I kind of feel like I have to call them active with that, even though it's just one match. Like it's only one match that matters, but like eh, that's a real team that they beat, right? So like I don't know. I'd love to see more matches from them. I just don't know. Well, I might have an idea, but I don't know where we're going to find those matches because we have a much more scattered season, and if they're not in Commissioner Cup, where are they going to find opponents?
Because
Right.
they were NECC Legends last semester, weren't they? And then I think they just dropped it this semester. Because I don't even think they played in the relegation. or I may be confused, but I thought they were in Legends last year or last semester.
I'm pretty sure that they were in Legends last semester. Yeah,
Yeah.
uh,
And they didn't even play in the relegation tournament, I don't believe. So they
but who
just
wanted to
totally
play in that?
dropped it.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I know it'll be
Yeah.
better.
But I mean, they had to play in it to get back in it.
Right.
They were in the bottom of Legends, anyways, from the first semester. So
But with their roster, that's just again like the fall of
Criminal.
Rutgers last
Yeah.
semester is sort of like, what are you guys doing? Like I've been giving Bellevue crap for, hey, your roster should just be better than lower, high teens, 18, 19, whatever. But Rutgers a year ago was definitively the fourth best team in collegiate, like definitively, and now with almost the same players, they might even be
The
lower than this.
Yeah, I was about to say the only notable roster changes I can remember is, well, Aiko is not playing anymore,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah,
But the main thing is I believe Iron Man is playing main support instead of Soap now. That was
yeah.
the only thing I can
But
think
I
of.
think he was playing that last semester. We saw Soap play some last semester, and I think that's part of the issue. Like, I think they might have lost to ASU with Soap in, but like, I think part of the issue might have been that they might not be getting good scrim time as a team. And I'm almost positive that prior to this iteration of Rutgers they were. Like remember before Rutgers got tap and neutral, they were still fighting their way as
Yeah, they
the
were still
top 20
solid.
team.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then, neutral showed up and then tap after that and they just exploded, but I wonder if they're just not getting the cohesive team practice because, tap and neutral are out playing in tier 2 and tier 3 and the rest of the team can't really practice. I wonder if that's what's going on.
could be. Obviously, we don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes, but
Oh, we're speculating because it's fun.
of course, of course.
Okay, okay. I'd like to see Rutgers as well. Kurt, you have any matchups you're really looking forward to see, or teams you'd really like to see compete in more stuff?
I think Kurt dipped from the chat.
Oh,
He's
see,
not in the
that's
Discord
okay.
anymore.
That's okay. I started talking to you when he just went, "Oh no, I'm being ignored." No, I'm kidding. He's got to bounce. Okay, he pinged me. Cool, cool. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so we've got that going on in terms of that's an important matchup that you'd like to see here. Are there any of these teams maybe in the bubble who you look at and go, hey, they're underrated or they are poised for a climb? Maybe it's Miami, Ohio. I mean, hey, you can be a bit of a homer. That's fine with me. You guys can certainly headhunt teams that I would have rated above you. So who do you think there's anything interesting in the bubble right now?
I think Georgia Tech is slept on personally. After playing them in Kentucky and
Mhm.
seeing their recent results, I think that's a team that should be on people's radar
Georgia Tech should have always been
because
on people's radar. Like in Dive Party, they made top 32. Like Georgia Tech has never been a you should ignore this team. But I agree, people have.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, no, and especially, seeing I remember at Kentucky, they brought out a number of different looks. They looked comfortable on a lot of things. Their communication was stellar. Like they seem like a very, very cohesive team, and I think they're someone to watch out for.
Okay. Do you think it's mostly off the back of a player or two, or do you think that's like, hey, teamwork is great, comms are great? What do you feel like is the identity of that team?
I think they're just a very good team because, like, on paper, if you look at their roster, it's not like anyone particularly notable,
Sure.
but they play incredibly well together. And I think, that's what makes a team great at the end of the day,
Nice.
regardless of the talent you have.
Nice. Nice. Okay. Cool. Cool. Okay. Well, I'm going to catch up a little bit on chat here. Let's see if you've got thoughts on that as well. Let's take a look. Someone hating on Converse in chat. Anything else going on here? Converse insulting themselves some more. Who's about to graduate? UC San Diego? Ah, they were DQ'd from a bunch of stuff because, well, they chose to disqualify because they're focusing on studies for graduating. Bunch of seniors. Okay, so that legacy might be over then. That's some interesting insight. What else do we have here?
Half of chat is me, says Hedwig.
Well, the other half is Kurt, who was saying since he would have made Legends. Did I rank Mizzou? I did rank Mizzou. Mizzou, I would have put just behind Georgia Tech. I know Mizzou beat Georgia Tech to get into Legends at the
Two
beginning of the
legends.
season, but I, at the moment, would put Georgia Tech ahead of them.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I might be a little biased because we lost to them last year in the CCC quals, but I think Mizzou is a little bit overrated. They're still a solid team, but I think they're a little overrated.
I think Mizzou, end of last semester, beginning of this semester, was at their peak, and they've fallen a little bit. And it's always relative to other teams, but
Right.
yeah, I think they, had a little bit of a mental boom. People have also figured out some of their weaknesses a little more. Yeah. Okay. So I've got Twin Salty, who, we happen to know is with ASU there, but what are your thoughts on ASU?
I think ASU is like, especially considering off they won the CCC South qual.
Mhm.
I think they were West or South? I think
They're
they were
West.
West. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all good.
Uh,
Geography's hard. We don't teach that in college.
yeah.
We just kind of assume everyone showed up knowing that, which is a bad assumption. But
I think even though Boise has not been as strong without clear,
Mhm.
like they won convincingly. It wasn't. I don't
Well,
think it was.
they
It was a one map.
did, but what I run into is really two things, and those two things are, okay, ASU 3-1 Boise, and that's really good, and 3-0'd UC Irvine, and like that's definitive. 3-0'd
Yeah.
UCSD, that is fantastic, that is amazing. Except if we go back a day, wait a second, they got 3-1 by Boise. Hold on. And I know that was like a super long day, et cetera, but like that's not a great look that we're looking at the day before. And we can also see in the group stages, again, they sort of got 3-1 by, it looks like, what am I saying? Or maybe that's referencing the same thing. But it looks like Boise had them and then it flipped. And most recent win goes to ASU, and ASU must have put something together to cleanly 3-0 UC Irvine, and then that same thing must have worked. Like that's how I infer that timeline. But I don't know. Maybe there's a little bit of vulnerability there.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Definitely the inconsistency is something to look at, but I think the wins against UCI and Boise do show what they're capable of at their peak.
Sure.
And it's just a matter of can they maintain that consistency. And
Yeah.
I think if they do, they are a scary team.
Oh, I think they're
100%.
absolutely a scary team. I think
And
coming
also,
in. Oh, good.
yeah, I was gonna say, considering they also are playing in OWCS, they're working a lot together. They have no intention of slowing down, to my knowledge.
Yeah, they've got enough talent on that roster, and they, seem to have comms that work. So yeah, I'm definitely there. Let me see. What else do we have here? So, anything you think we should be aware of? I didn't look closely at OWCS. Do you think there's any interesting things we should be aware of for collegiate teams coming out of OWCS? Any that you're following there?
Not quite. I think just, the Maryville is the only team who qualified for top 16, and all the other teams, I mean, they did well. All
Okay.
the other collegiate teams that I saw did well. So I mean, it's the noteworthy thing, in my opinion, for the teams that are playing is
Mhm.
that these are the teams that are really committed and
Right.
they really want to win.
Okay. Okay. That
So
sounds like it.
I see every team that played in OWCS, I think, will be a team to look out for, just because they have the work ethic to, and most likely the talent to back up their
Oh, that
their play.
that almost opens up a whole interesting question, I think, which is, do you think it is, I'll just go into this if you don't have time, that's fine. But do you think it's better for teams, programs, players? Do you think it's preferable to split scrim, sort of go, hey, everyone split up, play in tier 2, play in tier 3, because you'll probably play more than you would in a collegiate program, and you'll get to play at the highest level you can, and we're just going to trust that you're individually good enough when you come back? Or do you think it's better, not necessarily for the college, but for the success of the team, to say, hey, no, we want you to scrim together 3, 4, 5 blocks a week, whatever, that sort of thing? Like, which do you think is better for for the ultimate success of a team there in collegiate?
I honestly, speaking from a student's perspective, I think it really depends on the school you
Mhm.
go to and your commitment as a student.
Right.
Because
Not all these programs can scrim more than 2 or 3 times a week.
right, it really depends. And like, maybe you do want to play in ODCS and you want to play in as much stuff as possible. You also want to be a full-time student. So
Mhm.
it is difficult. It's just a matter of just assessing your priorities as a team and as an individual. Me personally, I take academics first before collegiate or other stuff. At Miami, we have to maintain a certain GPA, obviously. I don't know
Right.
if that's the case for other teams, but I think, it does depend. It's just going to depend on the team. But I think the
Okay.
teams that are committed to that and they're like, hey, I'm doing my work, I'm making sure I'm going to put aside this time so I can play. I think that's great. And I think the teams that do that successfully will be very good and they will be able to, get that extra practice time, get those better results. So,
Okay.
if you are able to manage all that, I think it's wonderful and it shows,
Sure.
yeah.
So, a little bit of a cop out, but the answer that I'm hearing is hey, being a student is tough. It's a lot of time. There's a lot of commitments, and it is. And that's part of the thing about collegiate, where it varies so much between these teams, how much time people have just based on what they're doing in their lives. Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay. Then I think that covers it. Chat mostly looks like they are, I don't know, forming an OWCS team. I don't know. I don't know. They're doing whatever. So I'm not so curious there. You have any final thoughts that you want to cover here? I can let you have the last word if you want. Otherwise, I think I'm gonna wrap this one up.
Well, just looking forward to finishing up BSC, going into playoffs. That's for sure.
It
I'm
will
excited
be
for the rematch versus you guys, especially.
well, we
'Cause
will have that rematch in the playoffs. I'm quite confident. I don't think it's possible for either of us to miss at this point,
no, yeah.
playoffs. But, the reality is on week one, it was impossible for both of our teams to miss playoffs. But, that maybe a little bit of a burn on some of our competition there. But, we're up to 4 competent teams and then 2 more. Yeah, I'm happy that we have 2 more teams that sort of look like, hey, they're rounding it out. They're a solid second block here in what appears to be.
Are we calling that Akron and Kent?
That's
You
what I'm
think, are those
calling
two
that.
teams?
Yeah,
Yep.
I think we have the next block there, which is good for the. We'd like to see the level of ESC go up there because
Of course,
we
yes.
would like to get more clout when we beat you guys. I mean,
That is
no, it'll be a fun
well.
rematch. It will. It
No, of
absolutely
course, of
will.
course.
Cool.
Yeah, if I want to get a little spicy to end it out, I honestly think I'm down on the Ball State stonks. That's all I'm gonna say.
I well, I'd mostly agree with you, but I expected Ohio to make them bleed a little bit more than I saw. That's the one thing that's giving me pause there. Like, oh no, no,
Yeah.
Ohio did make them bleed. Ohio could make you guys bleed. That's what surprised me. Never mind. Sorry, I'm mixing up my. I'm with you. I'm down on the Ball State stocks there. It's gonna be.
Ohio, I will add, Ohio was extremely fun to play on land yesterday. That was an experience. They were loud.
I
It was
believe it.
fun.
I believe we us ESC teams have so much fun when we do this stuff.
Well,
Like I was
I
so
hope that
disappointed not to make Kentucky the one time, but Kentucky's been such a good hey, it's ESC away.
hmm Yeah, no, I heard possibly the top four might be on land. So
I've heard that as well, but I would love to see some actual paperwork so we can figure out, plans and, what the budgets
yeah,
look like
no.
and all these things. Like, how
Hey,
many lanes are you playing in?
why do,
One to
why does
three?
Valorant
I
why
don't
does
know.
Valorant get better treatment than us?
I
Like,
don't
come
know,
on.
man. I don't know, man. Maybe because, their scene is run by a developer that everyone actually trusts is still going to be around and fund the program for another couple of years. But, who knows? Who knows? Okay. Cool. Good chatting with you, Shocker. Chat, I'm not seeing anything else crazy come out of here. I'll give you guys about 30 seconds to wrap. And Valorant didn't get better treatment. They literally found out they were laying 3 weeks before it happened. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Hedwig with the connections there. But that's going to do it. Orion, you got a final thought there from Converse? CIU makes a late run, get us in. I can see it. I am not counting CIU out. Like, CIU is a real team. Georgia Tech is a real team. Miami, Ohio is a real team. Shocker would just like me to do a page break between Miami, Ohio, and Ball State, which I can understand. That might be accurate. I'm
Hey, I'm saying, I think 2 weeks from now, we actually will be playing our ESC match at Ball State. We are going to drive out
Mm-hmm.
so we can embarrass them in front of their own team, their own home crowd.
Ooh,
So
ooh, okay.
that is going. I like to let my play do the talking.
There you go.
So,
There you go. Happy to see it. Happy to see it. Okay.
it was 3-2 Ohio or 3-2 ball. We
It,
3 Ohio twice in 1 week.
true,
So
true. Yeah, I would certainly favor you guys going into that matchup. I certainly would. Cool. That's gonna do it, and I will see you all in the next one. Later, guys. Peace.